So you either want to grow your Facebook ads or you want to grow your digital product, or perhaps you're trying to do both. So in this video, we will discuss how to grow and scale your Facebook ads selling digital product. And I'm going to be talking to Allie Bjerk, who has spent over $1.6 million of her own money, by the way, selling digital product on Facebook. And this video will be slightly different to what you're normally used to on this channel. So please do comment below and let me know, did you like this style of this video, this format? Also, do let me know, how did this help you? And also let me know what other questions have you got, either about Facebook ads or about digital products, because I want to make sure that we get back to and we get all of your questions answered. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Allie, welcome. So great to have you here. You managed to grow your business to over $6 million using Facebook ads, and thus far spent over $1.7 million on Facebook ads selling digital product. So what are some of the lessons learned from all of that huge ad spend and success and all of that experience?
There have been so many lessons. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to talk all things Facebook ads and digital products. But as far as the lessons that I've learned, I mean, I've been running ads, probably my own ads, probably about 5 years now. So I've learned there have been a lot of changes through ads. And, 2020, there were a lot of updates that happened with algorithm and operating systems. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned, the number one lesson would probably be how important testing is when you're starting to spend money on ads and testing things, selling digital products. If you have funnels and landing pages, and a lot of people that I work with, because I coach on ads, a lot of people will start one thing and it won't work and they'll just give up without testing other variations, or they'll think that their offer is bad, or they aren't doing a lot to figure out what part of the whole process is broken. So I think testing is the number one thing.
And when you say what part of the process is broken, I tend to struggle with these a lot, right? Because there are so many moving pieces, and particularly when you're selling digital product, you've got the creative, you've got the audience, you've got the budget, then you come to the landing page, you've got like just about a million pieces on the landing page, then the next step and the next step and the next step. And so how do you go on about figuring out what part of the process you need to, I guess, tweak? Like, are you like a numbers nerd that you just like sit in front of spreadsheets, or like how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I am somewhat a numbers nerd, but I pay a lot of attention to what are considered benchmarks in marketing. I look at what a typical cost should be from Facebook, and I know against, just from reading blogs and looking at other people's funnels and having a coach myself, I know what's normal and what's not normal. So I can go through every one of those pieces and just look, okay, is this benchmark where it should be? Is this next step benchmark where it should be? And by benchmark, I mean, if you take all the other ads or all the other funnels, all the other landing pages, what is the average of how every single other funnel converts? And then I just make sure each piece isn't broken. If I'm looking at the ad itself and I see the ad has, if my goal is to get a 1% click-through rate on the ad, which seems super low, but is actually the benchmark. If I didn't know that, I might think that ad was bad and turn it off and be like, 1%, that's terrible. But it's actually normal. So now I know when I'm looking at my ads, if I have something that's at 0.5% of people who see the ad are clicking through, then I know that's not a good ad. So it's just looking at each one of those little pieces and figuring out, is this what it should be? Is it not? And then turning it off. But I think where people get stuck is if they don't even know what's normal or what they should be looking for, it can get really confusing trying to optimize any piece of your digital product funnel.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so how did you get to $1.7 million in ad spend? Like, did it start with like $20 and then,
Yeah,
and let's put some
it
more and
totally
more
did.
and
Yeah.
more, or?
Yeah. And it's really funny because it did start, I think I spent $17 that first day and I had one sale and I was like, oh my gosh, person totally bought this product by accident. They're probably going to want a refund. There's no way someone who doesn't know me, some stranger just bought my digital product. There's no way they meant to do that. And then they didn't ask for a refund and they sent me an email and they're like, I love this product. So from there, it's like, I just learned, and I'd been running ads for other people for a long time. So I just scaled my ads. I pretty much doubled my budget every single day until I was spending, at one point I was spending dollars per day on ads and making about 2 to 3x return on ad spend for every dollar that I spent.
Amazing.
So I started very, very tiny and just grew it from there. When I started, I didn't have $1.7 million at the time. I didn't even have like $100 at the
Yes.
time. So it's just, it grew over time and I just kept scaling, knowing that I spent $1, I made 3. If I spent 10, I made 30.
Yes.
Spent 1,000, made 3,000. Just the math kept mathing. So
Yes.
I just kept increasing my budget, and that's how I ended up at that amount so far.
That's amazing. And tell me about the math keeps mathing, because sometimes when I try to grow our ads, the math does not keep mathing, Like
Right.
I'll
Yeah.
give you some
Yep.
examples. Like we've got some great performing ads. Some of them have been running for even a couple of years, and some of them run amazingly on like $100 a day. And then you go to 120, you go to 150, you go to 200. Some of them at some point I was able to get to 500 a day, but then just something happens and it just stops. So how do you deal with that? And then when I scale that back and I'm like, okay, when was it performing really well? And then you just start cutting it down, and then it magically works again. So what's your
Yeah.
experience with that? Like for you,
Super
just
annoying.
it's just kept doubling and everything was fine?
Yeah, and that was 2019, so things were a little bit different in the ads world, where I could spend, I could put a budget in to spend 1,600 a day on one ad set, and it would just go, and it would spend it, and then I would do they had a lot of A and B testing that you could do at the
Yes.
time, where you'd run two audiences against each other, and it would just work amazingly to find. It was like the algorithm got pushed harder to try to find
Yes.
all the buyers for you when it was in that split test mode. I haven't found that same ease of being able to put all my dollars in one basket. Now the way that I scale is more smaller ad sets, I guess. So, $35 a day, $50 a day, having lots of different sections of my audience run in these very small ad sets and just scaling. So they call it, there's either like vertical scaling or horizontal scaling. And vertical scaling is when you're increasing by duplicating into different ad sets. So if I have, say I have one ad set, say I'm targeting people who are interested in lead generation, and then I can look at the stats and I can see, okay, most people who bought my product are women between the ages of 35 and 44. So then I would duplicate that ad set for another $35 a day and run it to women who are like 35 to 40. Then I duplicate it again and run it to 35 to 44, whatever ages. So I'm trying to find these like micro segments of my best buyers, and then I just keep scaling, so that instead of spending only $35 a day, I'm keeping my budget small, because it seems like for the ad set budget, Facebook likes that, but I'm scaling through lots of different ad sets,
Mhm.
like these little micro segments of my audience. And then the other way to do it is to increase your budget. And I found about 30% per day is working pretty well right now. So you just incrementally increase it a little bit at a time. And the other thing is testing out what they call the campaign budget optimization. So when you have ads that are converting really well, when you've set the budget at the ad set level, you just keep track of your best performing audiences, your best performing ads, and then you can put those into a CBO campaign and be able to scale that up with way more stability. So you're not, hitting learning limited or getting stuck and needing to start over with these small ad budgets, because it's really hard to get to your goal when you keep kind of being throttled by not hitting Facebook's goal for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And the duplicating of ad sets. So when you're saying that you duplicate those, so you just slightly change the ages, right? So that it keeps still
Yeah.
within the range.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll just duplicate the exact same ad set with no changes, and they'll both keep performing
Yes.
too. So it's something about those smaller budgets seem to work really
Yeah.
well for me.
I've tried those too, and it's interesting because sometimes I duplicate them and the duplicate like doesn't get any sales at all. And so then it's like testing budget, but now the testing budget is like eating into your margin, right? So
Oh yeah.
so for this math to work and for the budget to be there for testing, you obviously need to be ready to have a great margin as well, right? To have
Yeah.
to
Yep.
have that margin for testing. So what is kind of your benchmark for that? Like knowing that, okay, in order to launch a new digital product, I'm gonna get these ads ready. So what are some of the things you think about from the point of your digital product?
Yeah. So the way that I build my digital products is in a multi-step funnel. So I always think about the front end product, like what is the thing that's going to get the people's attention? What is the thing that they think they need? Usually I try to launch digital products that are going to save the buyer time. But then I always build a multi-step funnel with what I call like an offer suite. So it's got a main offer, it has an order bump on it, it has sometimes an upsell or what they call one-time offer, even a second one-time offer. And my goal is to keep that average cart value. So the total average amount of what all buyers end up spending. Between some people, they always have to take that main order. Some will take the order bump, some won't. Some will take the upsells, some won't. So whatever the average amount ends up being per buyer, I always want that to be at least like 2 to 3x higher than what I'm paying to get that sale on Facebook. So if I'm spending $25 on Facebook, I need to make sure my average cart value is at least $50 to $75 to be able to scale it and have that margin in there.
Okay. And then for the main method for digital products that you teach, it's called tiny offer. And by the way, guys, if you have any questions around that, just make sure you put that inside the chat, because we'd love to answer all of your questions. And also inside the description, you can see Allie's contact details. So the main method that you teach when it comes to tiny offers and digital products is for the starting offer to be somewhere between 19 and 37. Is that right? When it comes to
Yeah. What I've found is really anything less than 50. So I do a lot for 27, but I've also launched $37 products, $47 products, and it seems like they convert pretty well the same.
And then we've got the order bump, and that order bump, it's just something that's a no-brainer that people add to their cart, and at that point, the digital product becomes profitable or break even, right?
Yep, that's the goal.
Okay. And so after that, what is normally the benchmark that you aim for people to take up your upsell? Like, and what would be one of your upsells, let's say, in the digital product suite?
Yeah. So usually it's I'd say about 10% of people I would like to take the upsell. And I've had products everywhere from let's say $77 as an upsell for almost another mini course that they would buy, all the way up to, I've tested $497, $997 for a bigger, more like a signature course. And of course, when it gets to those higher dollar amounts, maybe only 1% of people will end up buying that, but it still really adds up, and really shifts your average cart value when you have a really relatively high ticket product on there, like a $997 course.
So, and then you would just test it, right? From your point of view, like when you build your offers, you're just like, I can have 10% of people who buy this for 77, but if I get 1% of people buy this for 997, I have actually exceeded the average cart value. Is that the thinking behind that?
Yep. So always making sure that you're watching the numbers on it, because like you said, I mean, it's one thing to sell a lot more of a product, but if it's a smaller dollar amount versus, 1% of the high ticket thing,
Yes.
it might end up being a way higher cart value.
Yes. And so how long do you test this process for?
With that type of thing, I would say probably at least a week or two if I'm testing. Depends on how much I'm spending on ads too. So I know how many people have gone through, but I'd say usually if I've had 300 to maybe 300 people go through the whole funnel, and then I watch, did more than one person make the buying decision to buy a higher ticket offer? Is this consistently at 1% or 2%? So there have been times where I've launched a new version of a funnel, or I'm split testing 2 pages, and right on the first day I'm like, oh, this new test is standout doing way better, and I would shut off the other one, and then I notice a dip in my sales, and I'm like, wait a minute, I thought this was an improvement. So then I go back and I test both of them for a longer term, and it ends up being my original page one. Like if I had just given it more time, but the one buyer happened to like the page that they landed on, they ended up buying, but I made a decision way too soon on not enough data. So I've learned to be patient and look at averages instead of just trying to make a decision on the test in the first 24 hours based on like one person.
That makes sense. And when it comes to Facebook ads, I find that everybody has like a threshold or a comfort zone to spend on testing before they like make a decision, and like after spending $1.7 million on ads, what would you say is like your comfort zone, that you are willing to just, place on ads?
It's pretty low. I mean, it's a lot lower than you would think, surprisingly. Like if I say I started a new campaign and I spent even like $200 and I didn't get any sales, I would probably shut it off pretty quickly. I usually only give myself like 48 to 72 hours. And if it's not converting well, or I don't like the data, I shut things off.
So ideally, like what's your goal to be spending per month on Facebook? What are you aiming?
Yeah, I mean, right now, the most I've ever spent a month on Facebook ads is probably about $250,000 a month.
Okay.
Which at the time, I wasn't just running ads to a tiny offer, but I had a live webinar that I was running ads to that was a 5K program. So it was still consistent with 2 to 3x return on ad spend for that amount. So maybe not exactly for that. I think that was a different month, but at the same time, it's all relative to the ad spend. Like as long as you know your ads are profitable, it's a lot of people ask me that question, like what should my budget be? And I know it's all dependent on how much you want to make, and but also like what's your bandwidth for how many clients you can support, and what's your team look like, and how big do you want to grow your team? Because I definitely experienced that early 2020, probably around the time that we all started experiencing social shutdowns and COVID. I had the biggest month ever, and I had hundreds and hundreds of people coming into my group coaching program, and it was such big growth that I think I wasn't quite ready for that. It's like I hit my upper limit for how many people I wanted on a Zoom call at one time. Hundreds felt a little too much for me at the time. So I think learning where your comfort level is, and learning how you want to expand beyond that. But also, I think with ads you can scale incredibly fast, and that's not always a good thing either.
Yes, that makes sense. And so going back to understanding like the creative for your ad,
Mm-hmm.
how do you go on about that? Like, do you now feel like you have a template in your head, in your mind, understanding like what cuts through to your audience? Or how do you go on about that creative process?
Yeah, so I usually have a few standbys, like the normal way that I like to launch ads. I do a lot of I have digital products, so I do a lot of like digital mock-up ads. I do some more like headshot professional shoot style ads. I've been doing a lot more video, like just holding the phone out selfie style and talking about the product. But then even some like ads that look like reels or look like GIFs that kind of match the cadence of what they're used to seeing on social media can work really well. So when I launch a new tiny offer or a new ad campaign, I have my typical 4 or 5 that I'll launch right away. But something I'm really learning is I only speak for one person, one type of my audience, or one awareness level. And as I'm learning how to scale in a different way too, and I've got an ads coach and I'm learning a ton from him, I'm learning to write in different cadences with different types of copy, like some that sound like me, some that sound way more aggressive than I do, some that have really long copy, some that have short copy, some ads that are ugly, and some that I think are really pretty, just so I'm attracting a lot different type of audience than I would normally just default to attracting.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because as the ads are spending more and it's getting broader and broader and broader, the algorithm probably finds it difficult to find you the same type of a person who already bought, right? It's fishing for the new audience.
Yeah.
And so do you then
Yep,
test these
exactly.
inside one ad set altogether, like, or is that a completely separate campaign?
Usually I'll do it all in one ad set, and then after I have some proof in one ad set, then I'll copy it into the other ad sets too. Because sometimes one audience will love a certain set of ads, and I'll try to test a different audience or a different interest, or even lookalike versus retargeting. All these different audiences, and they don't always convert the exact same. So I think if I can get proof in one ad set, then I'll try to test it inside of others. But it doesn't always mean it's going to
That
work.
makes sense. And so you've seen so many people who want to start Facebook ads and want to sell digital product. I mean, digital products are huge right now. What would you say that is something that you see people do all the time and you would be like, you know what, don't start with this. Like, this is not something you need to like pay attention to right now. It's something you actually have to skip.
Yeah. I think one big trend that I'm definitely seeing right now is a lot of the reselling type audiences, like selling other people's courses or stuff like that. And I think that's a really hard place to start ads, because you haven't found your avatar yet, you haven't found your voice yet. A lot of those different types of things make it hard to start with ads if you didn't create the product or you haven't built up to that point. So yeah, I think that would be one of the main ways to do it.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And then when it comes to running ads profitably, what would you say something to really pay attention to? Like, what is the one thing where you were like, you know what, maybe it just happened for you in the last 6 months that you were like, this one thing, I just
Yeah.
never knew about this one thing.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it's been the campaign budget optimization. So learning, I've only ever run ads in the setting the budget at the ad set level, but I think learning finally campaign budget optimization and just learning how to make that work has been helped me really stabilize my ad accounts, and I avoided it for a really, really long time. But I think that kind of ties into a whole mindset of being a student and continuing to study something and not getting stuck in just one way to do it, because what I was doing was working. It was fine, but things evolve and ads change like crazy all the time. So I think for people to they are interested in learning to be an expert or learning something, like don't be afraid to keep studying and keep learning, and not be, don't be afraid to continue being a student.
Yeah, and also ultimately, from what I'm hearing, is that the strategy that got us to this point is not the strategy that's going to get us to the next level, right?
Yeah, it never is.
Yeah, like I'm just
No.
thinking about our ads, the most we've ever spent on ads per month was about $15,000 and per
Mm-hmm.
month. And that's what I thought was like a lot. But
Yeah.
hearing you, go like more than 10x that at 250,
Yep.
that requires a whole another strategy, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And a whole other comfort level too.
yes,
It's like I've talked to people who are spending millions per month on ads, and that blows my mind. I'm like, I could never imagine spending a million or $2 or $3 million a month, but they're getting the return on that too. So I think that we just have our own comfort levels. I think you said earlier, and either finding somebody who can help you learn the strategy to get to the next level, because you can't. There's that quote of, you can't see the label from inside the bottle, and I think that applies to so many different things, but especially
I
ads.
love it. I love it. Yeah. So true. So true. And so, for example, for $250,000, like how many campaigns did you have running at once? Or just one? One
I
at
don't know.
250 grand. Let's
No,
go.
I, no way. I think it was like, we probably had five different campaigns, but at least like 10 different ad sets in each campaign, and then hundreds of different ads
Uh,
that we had running.
okay.
And lots of different things happening with retargeting. And if they looked at this ad, then we want to show them this ad next, and just setting up exclusion audiences. It does get quite a bit more complicated with that ad spend, but yeah, it worked.
So that's another point that, a lot of us think that scaling budget to 250 grand a month is just about increasing the ad spend, but it's not, right? It's also actually what
Right.
you're saying about putting in the work, right? Because what I'm already
Mm-hmm.
hearing is that, if I've got a campaign that I've been running for 8 months now with the same creatives, expecting miracles, so to speak, uh,
Yeah.
it might work
Right.
well on my, smaller budget of $120 a day. But if I want to bring it to the next level, then I've got to create the creatives that are the next level. So that's kind of what I'm hearing from
Yeah.
that too, that it's not just about, oh, let's grow the budget, but actually you've put in
Mm-hmm.
the work, right? You've created all of the new ad
Yeah.
sets, the exclusion audiences, the creatives, and we're just doing this over
Mm-hmm.
and over and over until you were able to scale to 250 a month, right?
Yeah, and at that point too, I had other people helping. I mean, I wasn't just in there myself doing it. I had a media buyer, and I had I had a much larger team in those days. And so I think that's the other thing to think about too, is what is your role going to be in scaling that to the next level? Are you going to have someone on your team that's building the campaigns for you, or a designer creating the designs for you? Just because to be able to keep running, doing all the things that you have to do as CEO, learning where you need to delegate to, and what's probably not needed for you to be doing, is something to think about too.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also having that distance, right? Of not like watching every
Yeah.
single click and a dollar, because if you have a media buyer, then they don't feel the same about 250 grand the way as you feel, because it's your money,
Right. Yep.
right?
Yeah,
And so
exactly. Yep. They're
sometimes
way more
having the
comfortable.
distance and having somebody else spend your money can actually result into better results, because they are not so like stressed about, not that you were
Right.
stressed, but I
Yeah.
get stressed about the
Yep.
money.
It's not, yeah.
Uh,
It's different when it's not their money
yeah,
too. It just feels different.
amazing. Ali, it's been so amazing to have you in the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything
Yeah, thanks
else
for having me.
you want to leave the audience with?
No, I mean, I'm appreciative of being here. And if anyone wants to learn more, they can always check out my website or connect with me on Instagram. And I'm happy to nerd out on ads or tiny offers anytime.
Thank you so much. And guys, for everybody else, once again, if you do have questions about Facebook ads or digital offers, make sure you put that inside the comments, and I'm going to get back to those comments and answer all of your questions below. Also, inside the description, you find Allie's contact details. And thank you for sticking around. If you have stuck around until now, make sure you give it a like and subscribe, and we talk to you guys later. Bye.